Every year, on the 11th of November, Canadians observe Remembrance Day, an occasion dedicated to honoring the soldiers that have fallen in numerous wars and armed conflicts in our past.
Many countries have similar traditions. In the US, it is known as Veterans Day. In the UK, Remembrance Sunday is observed the Sunday before the 11th of November. This video aims to explain the importance of Remembrance Day and promote a deeper understanding of how this event came into being.
Remembrance Day is observed as 2 minutes of silence beginning the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month of the year, because it coincides with November 11th, 1918, when an armistice or a ceasefire was signed between the Allies and the Central Powers on the Western Front.
This event is significant because it effectively marked the end of the First World War and saw peace restored not only in Europe but around the world. Often referred to as the Great War, it was, to those at the time, a conflict of unbelievable destructive power that claimed the lives of almost 20 million people.
As Canadians, the First World War marks an important chapter in our history, not only because it was the tragedy that took away tens of thousands of sons and daughters from their families, but also because it marked a crucial turning point that changed the identity of this young country forever.
In the summer of 1914, many knew that a war in Europe was nearly inevitable. Tensions ran high as conflicting national interests between European powers such as France, Germany, and Russia threatened to escalate into open aggression.
Europe was split between two main opposing factions: the Central Powers, consisting of Germany, Austria-Hungary, and Italy, and the Allies or the Entente, consisting of Britain, France, and Russia.
On the 28th of June 1914, Archduke Franz Ferdinand, the heir to the throne of Austria-Hungary, was assassinated while on holiday in Sarajevo.
On the 4th of August 1914, in response to the German invasion of Belgium, Britain officially declared war on Germany. Canada, as part of the British Empire, was too at war.
As countries continued to honor their alliances made prior to 1914, another powerful nation entered the scene. Germany announced its support for Austria-Hungary and declared war on Russia and France. By mid-July, much of Europe was at war.
In 1914, Canada formed a part of the British Empire, which had reached its greatest extent in 1913, occupying a quarter of the world's area and governing almost a quarter of its people. In 1867, the Canadian Confederation saw the transformation of Canada from a British colony to a dominion, a semi-independent territory under the British Crown. This was when the gears had begun turning for Canada to assert itself as an independent nation.
On the 4th of August 1914, in response to the German invasion of Belgium, Britain officially declared war on Germany. Canada, as part of the British Empire, was too at war.
Crowds of young Canadians flocked to recruitment centers, determined to enlist. By December 1914, the first Canadian troops would arrive on European soil as part of the Canadian Expeditionary Force.
The Western Front of the Great War was an area marked by stalemate, where hundreds of thousands of lives were lost in fruitless battles. It consisted of some of the most recognizable scenes of the First World War, including the waking hell that many soldiers endured in the trenches. They suffered horrendous conditions marked by poor hygiene, disease, and psychological terror.
A name that would live in infamy, the Battle of the Somme, began on July 1st, 1916. What followed was one of the biggest massacres of the war, as Allied troops were mercilessly mowed down by well-entrenched German machine gun and artillery positions. Canadian losses were grim. Just over 24,000 were either killed or wounded.
However, even in the face of what seemed like a colossal defeat, one thing was becoming abundantly clear. Canadian troops were displaying outstanding courage and discipline on the battlefield.
On the 9th of April 1917, those qualities would be put to the test at the Battle of Vimy Ridge, where, for the first time, an all-Canadian fighting force was formed and tasked with capturing the German stronghold of Vimy Ridge. Through meticulous planning and painstaking preparation, the Canadian troops would capture the ridge in 3 days with commendable efficiency. It was an astonishing success.
A colonial army from halfway around the world had managed to achieve a resounding victory against the formidable Germans, whereas the armies of Britain and France could not. By this time, the Canadian Expeditionary Force had established itself as a formidable fighting formation on the Western Front and earned the respect of both friends and foes alike.
On November 11, 1918, hostilities between the Allies and the Germans would cease on the Western Front, and an armistice would be signed, bringing an end to the war. It would leave a lasting legacy for Canadians as their hour of triumph and prestige. But it came at a cost. 61,000 men and women would never return home. An additional 170,000 would leave Europe forever scarred by memories and images that never went away, broken in body and soul.
Remembrance Day has its roots in the Great War, but has come to be deeply influenced by the numerous other conflicts that Canada has been involved in for the past century, including the Second World War, the Korean War, the Vietnam War, the Afghanistan War, and the ongoing war with ISIS in the Middle East. For the past 100 years, Canada has prided itself in defending and promoting Canadian virtues of freedom, democracy, and human rights in an attempt to make the world a safer place. This brings us to the ultimate question. Why do we remember? Consider the following quote.
We must remember. If we do not, the sacrifice of those 100,000 Canadian lives will be meaningless. They died for us, for their homes and families and friends, for a collection of traditions they cherished and a future they believed in. They died for Canada. The meaning of their sacrifice rests with our collective national consciousness. Our future is their monument.
Every year, on the 11th of November, we honor their sacrifice by wearing a poppy, a scarlet, blood-red flower that grew on the battlefields of Belgium during the First World War. It was described in Canadian poet John McCrae's famous poem known as In Flanders Fields, where poppies still grow to this day.